Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a lot of stuff to get through today. Lots of things in the NFL, as Jerry Jones has come out with a statement basically saying that CeeDee Lamb is not a priority. We'll talk a little bit about that. The Cowboys obviously have a lot of big contracts to hand out. If they're going to do anything, what Jerry Jones' statement means, or if it's just a bluff. Then we'll talk about yet another update to Brandon Ayuk. It broke just before our show happened. We'll talk about Brandon Ayuk again, what the brand new update is with him, before continuing our series going and looking at every single NFL team as the preseason continues. We'll take a look at the Indianapolis Colts today. They get back I'll say prospect for now, Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Very excited to see what he can do this season for the Colts. Before finishing up our show, it is Friday. We're going to take a look at the MLB, take a trip around it. It is Friday MLB Power Rankings. We'll have the official Sports by GSMC Podcast Network MLB Power Rankings on at the end of the show, so stick around for that. Before we get into the Cowboys and Jerry Jones, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is, if you are on YouTube, go and hit that super chat button. Your message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you are not on YouTube, you can always go to GSMCPodcast.net and leave that tip or donation. The message will still pop up on the screen. We appreciate anything you do give. Appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. If you do have a comment, go ahead and, if you have a question at all to ask, go ahead and throw it in the comments. I'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show today talking a little bit about Jerry Jones and the Cowboys situation. It's a volatile situation, to say the least. It's kind of been on the back burner since Brandon Ayuk has taken full center stage this offseason, but the Cowboys are in a very tough spot with the huge increase in the amount of money that quarterbacks are making, Dak Prescott being on the hook for a contract coming up soon. It is really tough for the Cowboys to allocate their resources, right? They obviously have to pay a quarterback because you can't win in the NFL without a quarterback, as unfortunate as it is. You also have to pay CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, who is one of the top wide receivers in the entire NFL, as well as Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons, again, one of the best, just pure defensive athletes in the entire game of football. He's a very special player there. This is a tough situation to be in, and to a certain extent, when Jerry Jones comes out and says CeeDee Lamb is not a priority, I understand it sitting here, right? This is going to be big news because obviously they're working on contracts with 3 guys, and it's hard to sign mega deals. It's hard to give mega deals out to 3 guys at once. You don't see that happen too much and the team be successful around them, especially in the modern NFL. Generally, you can survive on 1 mega deal. You can maybe survive on 2, but 3 is killer if you're trying to build a team around those guys. So in theory, while they could pay them, most likely one of them is going to walk. And if you are the Cowboys, if you're the front office and you're thinking about this rationally, there is a clear answer on who should walk, right? And that guy is CeeDee Lamb. Now, you can talk all day about how, if you're going position by position, the one that you should let walk is Dak, because as far as ranking them positionally, Dak is while he's a great quarterback, he's lower down the list of quarterbacks than CeeDee is on the list of wide receivers, and Micah Parsons is on the list of defenders, right? They're both top 5 at their position, while Dak is arguably top 10 at his. I think I'd put him in my top 10, maybe sitting somewhere in between the 10 to 13 range, right? And while that's still a great quarterback, Dak is a guy that you want, and he was in MVP conversations last year. If you just look at the box score for everything and you take the context out of it, like 30 years down the line, we look at this season, we're going to say, hey, why didn't Dak get more votes or more consideration here? He had a great season last year, and it was coming off of a season where he led the league in interceptions without playing a full season. He played smart with the football, and a lot of that had to do with CeeDee Lamb, right? He broke out. Not to say that he wasn't already there, but he broke out last season, and he's looking for that contract. Justin Jefferson just got paid. Jamar Chase is about to get paid. CeeDee Lamb is in that conversation. He wants that 35, 36, $40 million contract to reset the market. Dak wants $60 million to reset the market. Micah Parsons wants to reset the market there. I'm not sure. I think the market for his position is somewhere around 120 million right now. Or somewhere around like 40 million a year, I believe, 30 to 40, somewhere in that range. So paying all those guys together, you're sitting right around 130, 140 million dollars a year for those guys, and that's more than half your cap. That's just about half of your cap for 3 guys on your roster, and you have to fill it out and make it competitive. It's really tough. If I'm take a step back, CeeDee Lamb is the easiest guy to replace. And that's not to say he's going to be easy to replace. That's not to say this is a contract that they shouldn't even try. But with the amount of young receivers coming into the game and being these explosive playmakers, I mean, we're starting to talk about this already. Justin Jefferson came out, was immediately one of the best. Jamar Chase came out, was immediately one of the best. CeeDee Lamb came out, was immediately one of the best. This year, it looks like we're going to have 2 receivers, again, that are throw Garrett Wilson on that list as well. We're coming out in this year, and we're seeing guys like Malik Neighbors with the Giants already wow at training camp. He didn't get targeted in the preseason game, but that's besides the point. Marvin Harrison Jr. is supposed to be a generational prospect. There are wide receivers out there to go and replace him. This is supposed to be a really good wide receiver draft, and every year, seemingly, we're saying that. There's going to be a great wide receiver in every class. Rome Odunze is in that conversation. I mean, I could go on and on about this, but there are a million different receivers that you can replace CeeDee Lamb with. So when Jerry Jones come out and he says, hey, CeeDee Lamb is not a priority, it's not something he should probably say publicly. Now, everything that Jerry Jones and everything that we hear reported on in the NFL, it has a spin on it. It's going out publicly to the media because one side, especially when it comes to contract negotiations, one side wants to say, hey, I'm in control here. So what this could be is Jerry Jones saying, hey, CeeDee Lamb, you're going to have to wait your turn. I understand you want your money, but you need to wait your turn. And he's saying it in a very public way, which is the most Jerry Jones thing to do, right? That very much is something he would do. Keep it outside, not in-house. Generally, these are the kind of the conversations that come in-house. So I do understand where this is coming from. I also understand CeeDee Lamb's camp, where they're saying, hey, my guy is a top 5 receiver in the league. You're not just gonna pay him. You're not just gonna go get a guy out of nowhere. I mean, the Titans tried this, didn't they? They traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles instead of paying him, and they tried to draft his replacement in Treylon Burks, and that hasn't worked out. There's precedent for this not working out. There's also precedent for this working out. So there's a lot of arguments here. I understand where both sides are coming from. For now, I think this is just a power play by Jerry Jones, and honestly, I respect it. I really do. I think this is him saying, hey, you need to wait your turn. We have other guys that we need to pay first. And that might throw a wrench in negotiations, if I'm being completely honest. If I'm a guy and I hear that, hey, you're not the most important for us, even though, you're one of the most important players on to the success of a team, it definitely stings a little bit. I'm not going to lie. But CeeDee Lamb is a guy that, he will get paid, whether that's in a Cowboys uniform or whether that's anywhere else across the NFL. He is going to get paid. That is just a matter of fact. It's a question of when. And he wants it sooner rather than later. Jerry Jones wants to work on the other ones. And if I'm an exec, I'm siding with Jerry Jones here. I think that's the right move for your team. You have to focus on the guys that are harder to replace. Not saying CeeDee Lamb is easy to replace, yes, but guys that are harder to replace. But let me know what you think here in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back in our next segment, we're going to do yet another update on Brandon Ayuk. Some news broke just before we went live. We'll talk all about that and more, as well as some other wide receiver news from around the NFL. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Everybody in the world down. Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Everybody in the world down. Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the take shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm in take shit. Hoping one day I blow up in the basement. Statement. The confidence so vacant. I'm in this shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Keep my waiting to be put down. It ain't a place I'll hit my sound. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the music fits, I'm losing shit. It's stupid myth. You choose to live, but choose to dip. You choose to fight, and lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. It's everybody in the world. Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just finished talking about CeeDee Lamb's future with the Cowboys. Tonk on YouTube says Lamb without the Cowboys is bad news for them boys. And you're probably right, to be honest. But like I was saying before, I do think he's the easiest out of the three that they need to pay, being Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons to replace. So if you're going to have to pick one, and it's a hard decision, in a perfect world, if you're the Cowboys, you sign all of them. CeeDee Lamb is the guy that you let walk, if I'm being honest. In this segment, though, we're going to continue talking about some wide receiver news around the NFL. The guy who has been in the spotlight for the entirety of the NFL offseason, Brandon Ayuk, is back once again. We have some breaking news surrounding him and an update with his trade situation with the 49ers. We'll get into that, as well as some other updates with guys like Juju Smith-Schuster getting cut from the Patriots, and other news for wide receivers around the league. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, or if you are on YouTube, you can use the super chat button to leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to continue our coverage of the NFL here in just a second, talking about Brandon Ayuk. And if I'm going to be completely honest with you guys here for a second, it's getting a little frustrating. I don't know about you. I just kind of want this situation to get figured out, because this situation with Brandon Ayuk has been flip-flopping over and over and over again the entire offseason. If we're going to put together a timeline for it here, it starts off with Brandon Ayuk asking for a contract, right? 49ers say sure. He gets unhappy. Contract doesn't seem like it's going to happen. He asks for a trade. Couple months later, he says, you know what? I'm just going to play this season for the 49ers. Then about a week later, it comes out he's posting stuff saying, hey, they don't want me. They're not going to pay me, on a FaceTime video call with Commanders rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels, right? That blows up. His whole thing blows back up again. He seems to be back in trade discussions, right? And then he dies down. He shows up to training camp. And then he says, actually, I'm formally requesting a trade. Now I'm formally requesting a trade. Now, this has been back and forth, flip flop forever. It seems kind of silent, and then all of a sudden there's rumblings. As of, like, I believe over the weekend, rumblings were that the 49ers had deals in place with both the Patriots and the Browns, and the only thing left was for CeeDee Lamb to pick the place that he goes to. He can get that extension. A couple days later, he says, "No, I don't want to go to the Patriots." And the Patriots are out of the race. The Patriots reportedly were offering him top 5 wide receiver money. That would be over $30 million a year for a guy in Brandon Ayuk that, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I do not believe he is worth that much money. But the Patriots were willing to give it to him. He says, "No, I don't want to go to New England." The Steelers pop into the conversation. Reports are he really wants to play for the Steelers. The Browns are out of conversation. And now today, just about, I'd say maybe just under an hour ago, news breaks that Brandon Ayuk is having discussions, had a sit down with Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers, and now he's working with for a contract extension with the 49ers. No longer in discussions for trades. This is maybe the most frustrating story that I have had to cover ever here with the NFL offseason. Like, I understand things change, situations change, but Brandon Ayuk, as good as he is, and I'm not going to sit here and say he's bad because he's a good receiver. He's a guy that I think deserves to be paid, but he hasn't done it on a team where he's getting double covered, where he's getting the best corner on him at all times, right? This is a guy that hasn't had to face his best competition because the 49ers, aside from him, have, Christian McCaffrey, they have Deebo Samuel, they have George Kittle, they have a super team of weapons there. So he hasn't been outside of that, and he's really only had one breakout year. Now, injuries play a part in that. Quarterback play plays a part in that. I understand all of that. But the 49ers, I wish they would figure this out, honestly. Do I think he's going anywhere? Again, I don't. I was semi-convinced he was going somewhere when deals were in place. I was convinced he was going somewhere when deals were in place. The team is usually the hardest part. And from what it sounded like, if he wanted out of the 49ers, it sounded like he didn't care about winning. Because if you care about winning, you stay with the 49ers for one more season, and then you get paid in the offseason, right? That's what happens, because he is going to get paid if he hits the open market. He's going to get paid. But if he stays with the 49ers, he legitimately you can't go to a situation that's better for him if he wants to win. This is strictly about money. And the Patriots offer him top 5, and he says no. So that means this isn't strictly about money. He wants to win too, or he wants something else. We don't really know because it's been shrouded in mystery. There's been report after report after report of what he's getting and what he wants. This is just a mess of a situation. But now he reportedly is staying with the 49ers, or at least momentum is working towards him getting a new contract with the 49ers, which, if I had to guess, is what he wanted the whole time. Again, we just kind of talked about this with CeeDee Lamb. We talked about how everything is posturing, especially in contracts. Everything is trying to get an upper leg in these negotiations, and this has been one incredible negotiation. Especially if Brandon Ayuk ends up getting what he wants from the 49ers, this is a masterclass in negotiations, because I have no idea how he pulled this off if this deal goes through. And it's crazy to watch. It's fun, it's interesting to watch, but it is legitimately insane to watch. Other wide receiver news around the NFL, namely with the Patriots we were just talking about. When they dropped out, they said they were focusing more on their rookie wide receivers, their younger guys, and that seems to hold true. As of today, they cut Juju Smith-Schuster, a guy who is a bigger name than he is a player. He struggled in New England, which every wide receiver struggled in New England. It's not a Juju Smith-Schuster team. My original thought when I heard that he was cut is, Juju Smith-Schuster, you are now a 49er. But with this new update that Brandon Ayuk might be staying with the 49ers, I have no idea what is going on there, right? Juju Smith-Schuster fits the system with the 49ers as a guy that, is a great he has the potential. We've seen him be a great player, especially when surrounded by other great weapons. Check off those boxes with the 49ers. He also is a guy that isn't afraid to go and get dirty and make those blocks. Check off the box for the 49ers. That's something that they love with their wide receivers. It's something that they instill in their wide receivers. It's one of those things that they like to talk about a lot on those broadcasts. The competition between Debo and Brandon Ayuk and all these guys blocking points. They have their competitions there. It's a big thing. It's a big thing in the 49er culture to get wide receivers that are willing to do that. But now with Brandon Ayuk potentially still being there, that takes it off the table. Where Juju Smith-Schuster will end up, honestly, he's not going to be a wide receiver one. It's not going to matter too much. The Patriots are on their youth movement. They are focusing more on guys like Jalen Polk, Kendrick Bourne, some of their younger guys, as they try to establish Drake May for this season. We saw in preseason a little bit of what the offense might look like. Again, we just saw a couple of games. The Patriots were playing the Panthers, and the Panthers are bad. That's not something new. That's one of the big takeaways that I took from that game. Obviously, they weren't playing all of their starters, so that's part of it as well. But they were really bad, and they need to be better than that. This feels like a season where Bryce Young and the Panthers, especially for Bryce Young, it feels like a make it or break it situation for him. And if that offensive line is the way it's going to be a break it season, maybe in more ways than one for Bryce Young. The other game, though, the Lions took on the Giants. The Giants took care of business there. My big takeaway from that is, it's not going to be a big thing, but Tommy DeVito is good at football. Like, not even joking. The Giants brought in Drew Lock. He got hurt in that first quarter against the Lions. He took a sack. It's a bad bone contusion is what it's being reported as. The Giants said they look into getting a new quarterback while he's hurt. But Drew Lock was supposed to maybe even compete for a starting spot with the New York Giants, right? I think he might have to compete for a backup spot. Tommy DeVito, for everything that he is, he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. He's not elite at many things, but what he is really good at is accuracy. If you go and look at some of the analytics, the analytics from last year, he was the most accurate quarterback in the entire NFL from all of last season. And he showed that off again. Now, he only threw for 92 yards, so it's not something insane. And again, it is the preseason. But when comparing him against that preseason Lions defense to a quarter of Drew Lock, looking at that preseason Lions defense, it was night and day. The offense ran smoother under Tommy DeVito. He didn't throw a bad interception into triple coverage or force any balls. And he threw it to the guy that was open. There were a lot of times where Drew Lock was missing open targets down the field. Malik Neighbors was open on one of them early in the first quarter, and they didn't. Excuse me. Drew Lock did not find him there. So there's, a lot of things that could have gone better for that. But that's my big takeaway. I think Tommy DeVito should be the backup in New York, potentially even the starter. Now I'm not ready to go that far yet because I think what Daniel Jones offers with his legs might push him over the top, but not a great quarterback situation with the Giants either way you slice it. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to move on and talk a little bit about the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are on a pretty good trail. They have their rookie quarterback or second-year quarterback now, Anthony Richardson. He's back. He's healthy. We'll talk about their offseason, give them a grade, see what record we will give them with Anthony Richardson back at the helm and hopefully healthy all season long. Stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over a bunch of wide receiver news, including an update with our big favorite main character of the NFL offseason, Brandon Ayuk. He has begun negotiations with the 49ers on a long-term extension to stay in San Francisco. We also talked about CeeDee Lamb and what the Cowboys had to say about him, with him being not the main priority. In this segment, we're going to continue in the NFL, take a look at the Indianapolis Colts. We're continuing our series, our segments, where we go around every single NFL team, take a look at their offseason, take a look at give them a grade, and then take a look at their schedule and give them a record prediction. In this segment, we're going over their offseason. We're giving them a grade. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you should have a super chat or super thanks button you can hit. If you do either of those, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts didn't do much this offseason. The Colts offseason maybe was the quietest offseason in the entire NFL. What they did, though, their major move, bringing back Michael Pittman Jr., who was their best receiver last season. He had a breakout year. He was a great receiver, huge for Gardner Minshew. He was basically the entire passing game. They do have a couple of promising guys in the draft. They also bring in Adonai Mitchell, who had mixed reports, goes in the second round. He should be an instant boost to that offense. The biggest boost this offseason, and it's not really something they did, it's the fact that they get star or super hyped up sophomore quarterback Anthony Richardson, a guy that I absolutely believe in. A guy who has gotten a lot of comps to Cam Newton, and if you watched him play in those 3 or 4 games that he did play, despite limited action, he looked really good in the NFL. It didn't look like it was going to be too much on him. The question is if he can stay healthy. And if this is another one of those situations where the Colts find a great quarterback and they can't stay healthy, it's brutal. 2 times in a row where you find a great quarterback. Obviously, Andrew Luck didn't work out due to injuries, but he was undeniably a great quarterback. This is a different kind of situation, though. Anthony Richardson is a guy with all the athleticism in the world. He could beat you he could probably go to the Olympics and do just about any event. That is the kind of athlete that he is. and he's so much fun to watch. The comparisons to Cam Newton are absolutely accurate, but bringing him back, and if they can get a full healthy season out of him, is gonna be huge. They bring in Joe Flacco. This is where Joe Flacco has ended up after his stint with the Browns, winning Comeback Player of the Year. They bring him in as the backup just in case anything happens. At running back, you have Jonathan Taylor, who, after the whole saga last season, signed a big extension. Uh, their backup running backs are a little bit not where you want to be. They lose Zach Moss. He goes to the Bengals. He's the starter over there now. But Trey Sermon is the backup, and then Tyler Goodson, the guy who dropped that all important, infamous fourth and short pass that would have probably sent the Colts to the playoffs last season over the Texans, is the third string. The wide receiver situation is after Michael Pittman is a question. Josh Downs had some flashes last year as a rookie. There were a couple of big games from him. He's a guy that could be a could be a problem. Like I said, they also draft Adonai Mitchell in the second round out of Texas. He has a lot of hype around him. I'm not super high on him, but I think he will be an effective boost to that offense starting right away, getting some important, I guess, minutes for the Colts, getting some important downs out there. They also have Alec Pierce, a guy that he's not going to light the world on fire, but he made a couple of big plays last season for the Indianapolis Colts. As we get down, the offensive line obviously is great, anchored by Quentin Nelson. Now it could be a little bit better on the tackles, but Quentin Nelson is one of the best guards in all of football. So getting him in there is going to be is huge. So the offense, it has, especially again, all of this kind of rides on Anthony Richardson, whether or not the offense is good. But there is absolutely a good shot for them. There's a great shot for them to be good as long as he stays healthy. They have a lot of the pieces there. On defense, it's a sneaky good defense. Their biggest name on defense probably is DeForest Buckner. There aren't a lot of huge names as you go down this defense, but there isn't really a weak spot either. You could say maybe the secondaries there, but outside of maybe corner two, there aren't a lot of places where I'm looking at. I'm saying there's an obvious need for improvement. You have on the pass rush DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye, first round draft pick Liatu Latu, who if he stays healthy is going to be a promise. Linebackers EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin are going to be huge for them. And then you have Kenny Moore, who's been sneaky good all season, ever since he's gotten his opportunities here. This is a Colts team that is just solid. It's not a team that's going to blow you away with talent. It's not a team that you're going to look at and be like, wow, I can't believe they put this roster together. They're not built like the 49ers. They're not built up like that. But there is a world where everything clicks and, they get all the pieces to fall into place. And they are a really, really tough team to knock out in potentially the playoffs here. Again, a lot of that comes on health. This is a team that does have a lot of guys that are injury prone on their roster. We'll see how that goes. Again, it all kind of comes down to Anthony Richardson, how successful this team is. Right now, Vegas has their odds set at 8.5 wins. For their offseason, again, it was really quiet. They didn't do much. I'm going to give them a C+. They improved at positions, but they didn't do much. They brought back who they needed to bring back. They let go who they could let go. But it's not super inspiring. Again, not every offseason has to be this big splash. The Colts were quiet, and they did it effectively. They did what they needed to do, so I'm giving them a C+. A good job getting what they needed out of an offseason that was very crowded and not losing where they could have lost big. But anyway, I'm going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at the schedule for the Indianapolis Colts. Go through all 18 weeks, all 17 games, give them a record prediction, see if I have them making the playoffs where they were so close last year. Just ball slipping through someone's hands out of the playoffs. So we'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shock Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the Indianapolis Colts offseason. It wasn't a very wild offseason. They only brought in they didn't bring in that many guys, to be completely honest with you. They didn't really bring in anyone, honestly. But in this segment, we're going to go over a newly healthy offense, getting everybody back. Take a look at their record. Give them a record prediction for the season. See if they can make the playoffs after just missing out on it last season. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, or if you are on YouTube at the GSMC Sports Network channel, you can do a super chat or a super thanks. If you do either of those with a message in it, that message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Indianapolis Colts schedule. We've talked a little bit about another another AFC South team. We did the Jaguars yesterday, and we talked about how this schedule isn't the easiest. It's a little bit harder than last season when comparing it. This is a Colts team that I think is about the same as last year. Obviously, when I talk about that, I mean when they're healthy. And that was a big part of their season last year, their season story. Their brand new face of the franchise quarterback, Anthony Richardson, gets hurt almost immediately, misses out basically the entire season. He only played like 15% of their snaps this year. So this season, I'm projecting a full healthy season for him, and he's a divisive prospect, right? He was a guy that only played 13 games in college, and some people were low on him. I am very high on Anthony Richardson. So I will preface this prediction with that. I think Anthony Richardson is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in about 5 years. I think he's going to be up there in conversations. But for this year, I just want to see him be healthy. And that's what I'm projecting at. Week 1, they take on their division game, one that ended their season last year, at home against the Houston Texans. I have the Colts winning this game at home. Anthony Richardson is in the lineup. I think that is the difference. Now, the Texans did get better too, but I'm giving this game to the Colts. They start off 1-0. Week 2, taking on the Packers. They head up to Green Bay, take on Jordan Love, the new highest paid man in the NFL. I think the Packers take care of business in their home opener after a trip to Brazil. They win that game in Lambeau. The Colts fall to 1-1. Week 3, they stay in the NFC North, take on the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams. I think the Bears aren't going to be cohesive at that point. I take the Colts to win that game over the Chicago Bears. They improved to 2-1 on the season. In week 4, they stay at home, continuing their homestand. They host the Pittsburgh Steelers and their confusing quarterback situation. I think this is going to be a really good game. But I'm taking the Colts in this one. They improved to 3-1 through 4 weeks. Week 5, they head down to Jacksonville, take on the Jaguars. This is another division game. Division games are always tricky, and the Colts, historically, have been very bad against the Jaguars in Jacksonville. So we're taking the Jags in this game. The Colts lose to the Jags here. The Colts fall to 3-2 through 5 weeks. Week 6, excuse me. Another division game, this time in Tennessee. They take on the Titans. Will Levis and the Titans, I think, might surprise some people. We'll talk about them on Monday, actually. But Will Levis and the Titans might surprise some people. I'm taking them to beat the Colts here. The Colts fall to 500. They are 3-3 on the season, setting up for a Week 7 date at home against the Dolphins. The Colts are a team that always play up to their competition, and the Dolphins are a team that usually play down to their competition. I am taking the Dolphins in this one, though. I do think this is going to be a really good game. I think this has the potential to be a classic. Lots of offense in this one. But I'm taking the Colts to lose this game. They fall to 3-4 on the season. Then they head to Houston once again. This is the second game against the Texans. CJ Stroud and the Texans broke their hearts last season. I'm taking the Colts to sweep the Texans in the season series this year. The Colts get back up to 500 at week 8, going 4-4 through that stretch. Then they take on the Vikings, working their way through that NFC North. The Vikings are a team that, with Sam Darnold, I'm more convinced that they're going to be better, but it's a tough division. I think the Vikings can take care of business here. The Colts lose to the Vikings, fall to 4-5 on the year. Then they take on the Bills, the AFC East, the other division that they are taking on. The Bills, I'm a little lower on. You can go and check out the Bills video if you want to see the predictions I had for them. But I have the Colts losing to the Bills in this game. Week 11 at the Jets in New York. We are taking the Colts to win a game versus Aaron Rodgers. That's going to be a fun one as well. I think the Colts are just going to be a fun team to watch. The Colts, after Week 11, improved to 5-6 on the year. Then they get the Detroit Lions. This one is at home. This is going to be a tough one for them. I am giving them a win. Like I said, I think the Colts are a team that can surprise a lot of people. But especially with Anthony Richardson here, they get back up to 500. They're 6-6 on the season. But that being said, it's not going to be all good. Next week, week 13, they take on the Patriots. The high of beating the Lions and the Jets in back-to-back week. And then they get the Patriots. I think the Patriots might get them as they relax a little bit. They fall back to 6-7 through week 13. They have a late bye. Week 14 is their bye. At this point, 6-7, they have a much easier schedule coming off of the bye. The Broncos, Titans, Giants, and Jags. None of those teams made the playoffs last season. Most of those teams were in the bottom of the league last year, the basement. And most of those teams didn't really improve that much, if I'm being honest. Some of them even got worse. But they get a late bye, and if they can survive to this point, like I have them at right now at 6-7, there's a good chance they can go on a run. And that's exactly what I have them doing. Week 15 against the Broncos. We'll talk about the Broncos in a little bit, but I am so low on the Broncos. I think I'm about as low as possible on the Broncos. I hate their quarterback situation. I have them beating the Broncos here, getting back to 500 at 7-7. Now they're in a playoff race here. This is a tough playoff race where 10 wins is not guaranteed to get you in. It depends on where the rest of the AFC falls into. Now 10 wins is enough in the NFC pretty easily, but 10 wins in the AFC is not going to guarantee a playoff spot, I don't think. Week 16 against the Titans, and that means they'd have to win out to get to that 10-win point. The Titans, I think they will win here. They're not going to get swept by the Titans on this season. Then they go to the Giants, and as much as it hurts me as a Giants fan, the Giants are very bad at football. So we're giving this game to the Colts. They'll take care of business pretty easily in that one before they take on the Jaguars at home to end the season. And they can beat the Jaguars at home. They just can't, for whatever reason, beat them in Jacksonville. So I have them finishing at 10-7 on the year. A tight race for these playoffs. I have them sneaking in as the 7 seed here, just getting in over some tiebreakers. It's going to be a tough AFC as we get through the rest of these divisions. Right now one of the wild cards is going to have 11 wins. 10 wins is just barely going to be enough to get in, which usually is what you need to guarantee a playoff spot. But it's tough in the AFC. The AFC is absolutely stacked this year. Let me know what you think of the Colts. I give them a C+ for their offseason. I have them going 10-7 after they went 9-8 last year. Just one win. That's over the 8.5 win total that I have them. I don't have them winning the division, though, and we'll get to that later on next week. We're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to come back, finish off our week, our Friday show, with some MLB power rankings. It is that time of the day. It is that time of the week where we take a quick trip around the entirety of baseball, as so much is going on constantly. We're going to talk about all of that and more in just a second, so stick around. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the Colts and their schedule as well as their offseason. I had them going 10-7 on the year. We also talked about a lot of wide receiver news earlier on the show. Brandon Ayuk had an update with him officially working on an extension with the 49ers now. Lots and ups and downs and twists and turn in that tale of the 2024 offseason. We also talked about CeeDee Lamb not being a priority for the Cowboys. An interesting thing to say publicly, but it's all posturing for contract stuff. So we'll see what actually happens in the future. In this segment, we're going to finish off our show with our classic Friday segment, the MLB Power Rankings. We're going to take a trip around the MLB, give you a nice little update on how every single team is doing and where they stand when compared to the rest of the league. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with the message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you are on YouTube, you have another option with the Sports Network channel. You can use that super chat button. Same thing. You can leave a super chat. A message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. I appreciate anything you guys do give. If you have a burning question about sports, anything at all you'd like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the MLB Power Rankings. We have a fresh set of Power Rankings from today, August 9th. Looking at our 1 to 30, we will start right there at the bottom. Maybe the most intriguing story in all of sports this week. The Chicago White Sox took the world by storm because they suck, because they've been so bad. The White Sox lost 21 straight games. They are sitting loudly and proudly at our number 30 spot in the power rankings this week, with a chance to be crowned kings of the number 30 spot if they finish off the season with a worse record than the 1962 Mets. 120 losses is what they're chasing. That infamous record is what they're trying not to beat. At 29, I have the Marlins. The Marlins are more quietly, not very good at baseball. They're probably not very good at football either, but they're not very good at baseball. They're here at the bottom. Them and the Rockies continue to flip-flop. I've got the Marlins down here at 29 for the second week in a row. The Rockies stick at 28. The Athletics, the team that let the White Sox break that 21-game losing streak, stay there at 27. They've got a little bit of momentum on their side, but they did do some taunting playing Taylor Swift's 22 before they could not make that happen. So maybe that's a little bit of karma for you guys there. At 26, the Angels sit here. Obviously, the blow of losing Mike Trout, one of the greatest of all time, still hurts, but this is a team that's been out of contention for a while, so it doesn't really matter. At 25, we have the Tigers. The Detroit Tigers sit at 25. This season is a lost season. They'll be much better next year. Same thing with our team at number 24. Taking a spot down are the Washington Nationals. My Washington Nationals are not good. They're fun to watch. They're the comeback kings of the sport, but they're not very good. Davey does not know how to run a bullpen. He's going to kill everybody's arm in there. James Wood is exciting, though, and I can't wait for the future. Both the Tigers and the Nats should be, as long as they don't mess it up in this offseason, really good next season. Playoff teams next year, maybe. We'll see. At 23 of the Blue Jays, the reason they move up, one person, Vlad Guerrero Jr. He's had a torrid month this season. They move up one spot to 23. At 22, we have the Cubs. Them and the Reds at 21 are tied right now. They're 5 games out of the wild card. They're not out of it. They're not out of it, but they both need to kick it into high gear starting like right now if they want to make the playoffs. The Pirates are just about in the same spot. They fall one spot down from 19 to 20 this week as they have been slowly tumbling backwards back to where they were more expected to be rather than contending for a wild card spot like they were a couple of weeks ago. At 19, we have the Rangers. They continue to struggle after winning a World Series. That World Series hangover is rough. Now, injuries suck, and that's a big part of it. They are still a good team. I think they'll be able to turn it around next season, but this is not their year. They sit at 19. At 18, the Rays. They stay there from last week. The Rays are just solid. They made some moves at the deadline. Some might say they got worse. Some might say they got better. It was kind of a neutral move. They're not out of the playoffs yet. They still have a shot in an AL wildcard race that is not anywhere close to being decided. Right now, they're only 5 games out, so they still have a real shot of making a run to the playoffs. At 17, we have the Giants. They are over 500 for the first time in almost a month and a half. Congratulations to them. They've just finished beating up on the Nationals. They move up 3 spots to 17. The Cardinals are on the are on the downward spiral. They made a couple of moves at the deadline. It hasn't seemed to be enough. They fall 2 spots to 16. The Red Sox are back where they probably belong, at 15. Right there in the middle of baseball. They are a little better than 500, and they still are in the playoff hunt, but they just feel like the most average team to me at all times. At 14, we have the Braves, and oh, how the Braves, the mighty, have fallen. They came into this season with such lofty expectations. Obviously, it's not their fault. They got killed by injuries. Their favorite to win the Cy Young pitcher, Spencer Strider, goes down early in the season. Their reigning MVP, their reigning MVP, Ronald Acuna Jr., goes down early in the season. The Bats have just never come out to play. They fall 4 spots to number 14. At 13, we have the Seattle Mariners. The Seattle Mariners, again, a really good team. The Bats need to get going. They've started slowly to wake up, but it might not be in time because of the team right ahead of them. The Astros, who are starting to fall. They made a big mistake, I think, at the deadline, more for their future than anything else this season. But mortgaging their future for Yusei Kikuchi is a mistake. The Bats are slowing down, but we've seen them be really slow at the beginning of the season. They were heating up. I believe in this Astros team. They'll come back. At 11, we have our biggest risers of the week. The Arizona Diamondbacks up 5 spots to number 11, their highest ranking of the season. That trade deadline, that all-star break did them wonders. They've been one of the hottest teams in baseball since then. Either them or the Padres have that title, who we'll get to in a little bit. But I want to focus on Josh Bell, who ever since coming in as an injury replacement has been back to his former self of about 3 years ago, hitting everything out of the park. He's been awesome to watch in Arizona. At 10, we have the Royals. Bobby Witt Jr. might be the best player in the league. Maybe. Some people are saying that. He's really good at baseball. The Royals were very smart to lock him up. It's going to be a really interesting MVP race this season in the AL between him, Soto, Judge, and Gunnar Henderson. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. At 9, I have the New York Mets. They continue to win baseball games. They have been the hottest team in baseball since June. They go up 2 spots to 9. At 8, we have the Twins. And don't look now, but if the Twins sweep the Guardians this series, they'll move to first place in that division. This is a very important series to watch over the weekend. That's going to be something to keep an eye on for playoff standings. The Twins move up 1 spot to 8. We have a flip-flop. The Brewers have been sitting very pretty at 6, basically all season long. We have a flip-flop. They fall 1 spot to 7, not because they did anything wrong, but because of how hot the Padres have been. The Padres have been incredible all season long. I had to bump them up. The Padres are awesome. They sit there at 6 right now. Everything is going their way. At 5, we have the Dodgers. This top 5 has legitimately stayed the same all season. We've had the same top 5, just in a bunch of different orders all year long. This is the lowest the Dodgers have been. And again, not necessarily anything against them. Shohei Ohtani is starting to pitch again. That is terrifying. That should terrify everyone in baseball. He's gonna win the MVP as a DH, which is not something you're supposed to be able to do, but he's going to find a way to do it because he's Shohei Ohtani. He is that special of a player. The Dodgers sit down 2 spots at 5. The Phillies are 1 spot above them. They're down 3 from the number 1 spot last week. This is because they just beat the Dodgers in a series. Kyle Schwarber, 3 home runs. He is an enigma I don't understand Kyle Schwarber. He is the embodiment of the three true outcome, and he's so much fun to watch. The Phillies fall 3 spots to number 4. The Guardians up 1 spot to 3. Be careful now, the Twins are on them. This is still a really good team. The Lane Thomas edition hasn't quite worked out yet. He's been cold since getting there, but he will turn it up. This is a guy that has good pop in his bat. The Orioles stay at number 2. Gunnar Henderson and that pitching staff, especially the top half of that pitching staff, continue to impress. The Orioles stick at number 2. And the Yankees back up at that number 1 spot, up 4 spots from the number 5 spot. Aaron Judge is a wizard at baseball. I mean, everything he touches goes a million miles away, right? Juan Soto, maybe the best swing in baseball right there. He is maybe the best batter in the world. It's crazy to watch, have those two in the lineup, and the pitching has started to turn it around. The Yankees are back on top of the MLB world, the baseball world. We'll see if they can keep that up. Let me know what you thought. If you agree or disagree with my list, I would love to hear from you guys. But we're going to take a break for the weekend. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. You've been listening to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We will be back on Monday covering everything from over the weekend. The Olympics will be over. We'll do an overview of every major story that happened over the Olympics as the closing ceremonies are on Sunday. So come back on Monday. We'll talk about all of that and more here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I will see you then. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn.